Today we have a very interesting person in the studio. But before I introduce her, if you are a Chelsea fan, then you need to tell people about what's going on today, because we have a Chelsea football player in the studio and she's doing amazing things in her career. Before I speak to Anita Asante, who is our guest today, please share this with everyone. Like I said, anyone who's interested in football, who's interested in women's football, we're live here on Facebook. Hit that like button so that you can get updates of all our shows. We're also live and interactive on our YouTube page, which is Omega Live TV. Subscribe there so you can also get all our updates of all our shows, and also, most importantly, Gold Diggers. So yes, as I said, we have Anita Asante in the studio. She is a midfielder for Chelsea Women's Football Club. She's a defensive midfielder, actually. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. I'm so happy that you're in the studio with us. And as it's International Women's Month, I just thought it was, perfect to have you here, because you're such an inspiration. You're a perfect example of a gold digger. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
So Anita, how did you get into football? I mean, when did it start?
I think from when I was really small, actually, like 4 or 5 years old, I was always kicking around the ball, anything round, basically, that was in the house or outside. I was kicking around, and then I would just play with, other kids my age at home, play with kids out in my area, and really my passion, I guess, for the game just grew from there.
Okay. So you started playing at Arsenal you started playing for the junior team in Arsenal in 1998, and then you went on to play for their main team in 2003, I believe. How did that change your life? The transition from just being, that girl who wants to play football into taking this seriously as a profession. How was the transition?
The transition kind of happened naturally, but when I first got into Arsenal, that was a big deal. Anyway,
yes,
when I was 14, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to play at this huge, well-renowned club.
Yes.
And I had no idea before then that women's teams existed, to be honest. I was just playing around with boys and stuff like that. So to get there and then be involved in the youth level and then to progress at each step was like, okay, I guess I have some talent, you know? It's like the first time I could really recognize for myself that I'm actually a good player. And then that transition into the first team was like, okay, now I have to really step up and prove to everyone that I deserve to be here, and I'm a young player with some talent, and I have some ambition. Especially when you're around experienced senior players and you're a young player, there's this perception that, young players are coming in, they're going to maybe be cocky and think they know everything. But that really wasn't me. I was very much the sort of person that came in and was like, I want to learn and from the older ones, and I want to just, wait for my time to play. Yes. And when it comes, I'm going to just grab it, basically.
So did you ever have another job before, as a teenager going to, not in school, but when you left school? In between that transition, did you work anywhere,
To be fair, I didn't. I worked when I started at university, or just before the end of sixth form college.
Yes, that
Then
period.
I started working for the club, actually at Arsenal.
Okay, wow.
So then I was getting I was a PA for the chief scout for the men's team, and a PA to the development officer for the women's team. So I had split responsibilities for both of these managers, and that was my first sort of experience of what working life is like, and what it entailed, and just being responsible, time management, and all that kind of thing. But it was a good experience for me when I was young to sort of get that exposure to the sort of other side of it, of working life, and not just sort of preoccupy my mind with just football as well.
So after Arsenal, you moved to Chelsea, which was just a year after becoming a professional footballer. You went from Arsenal, then you went to Chelsea, and I was reading, online that you got a lot of negative feedback about that, and the manager at the time of that club was like, you know, you and another lady had left.
Yeah.
Basically, like they've groomed you, you know, they've polished you nicely, and then you've just decided, I'll go to Chelsea. You play for Chelsea now.
Yes.
But we're going back to the beginning of your career because you played for Chelsea before.
Yes.
You went international.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, what made you leave Arsenal after a year and go to Chelsea?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I have a great relationship with my manager from that period today, you know.
Okay,
and
your manager from Arsenal.
From Arsenal, and at the time, you know, we weren't fully professional as such. We were like amateurs, semi-pro. You know, we were getting money to play, but it was pay as you play, kind of, you know, a little bit
at
like
that time.
At that time, you know, this is over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We had contracts with the club and things like that, but we still weren't. We were training 2 times a week. That, you know, this is not how it is today. And
I understand.
And we had, at the time, I felt like I'd accomplished a lot with the club, you know, and of course I had the utmost respect for my manager and the team because, yeah, I developed there. That's where, you know, that Arsenal had a special place in my heart, definitely. But then as an athlete, you always want to challenge yourself. And you always want to see, okay, what can I achieve next? How much better can I get? What can I give and contribute to other people and players around me? So when the Chelsea opportunity came about, it really was that they wanted to be a team that could compete with, like an Arsenal.
Oh, okay, I get you. Because Arsenal were actually quite...
We were a dominant side at Arsenal. You know, we won a lot of major trophies. And so I was like, well, maybe I can go there and contribute something. It's a different challenge.
They came to steal you.
Yeah, like, you know, I might not be...
Did they come to scout you? Like, how did it happen?
No, I just think we had a couple of discussions with the general manager there. And they were, you know, keen to get some experience and some, you know, good young players at the time. And I was like, well, you know, this is a great opportunity for me to maybe challenge myself to see if I can, like, handle maybe not being at the best club with the best players. And, you know, try and contribute that way. So that's really why I did it. It wasn't to, like, spite the club or anyone like that. It was personal goal, a personal journey for me. And, you know, my friend who's my teammate from Arsenal too also was going there.
Was you like, come with me, I'm going?
No, well, we had discussions about it, obviously. We did have those discussions, but, you know, for her, she probably felt the same thing. Like, you know, I've achieved a lot here. Yeah. And I love it, but none of us want to be complacent. You want to know,
that's it.
You want to know, like, just how far can I fulfill the potential that people tell me I have. And that's really why I left at the time.
Okay. So as all this was going on, what were your parents thinking? Like, let's say from sixth form to university period, like what were your parents thinking? When you told them you want to play football professionally, how did your parents feel, your siblings at home? Like, how was it?
Well, I think growing up, you know, my parents have always been my biggest supporters and my siblings. And they've sacrificed a lot for me also, you know, the early mornings, driving me across the country for matches and coming back from work and all that stuff. So I felt that they were just as invested as I was, in a strange way, because like I said before, it wasn't professional as such. But I think they saw how much joy it gave me as well. And I think they got kind of a fun experience from it too, because they got to meet other like-minded parents. And that became like a social thing for them as well. And of course it's fun and entertaining to watch something competitive, your kids competing and building relationships, friendships with other players. So my parents, I think they knew, because I was always still studying and playing, that I don't think they were concerned that I was just going to have this like one-track mind that I'm just
You're going to play football.
They thought, well, you know,
you had a good balance.
She's still taking her education seriously enough.
Because that's all Ghanaian parents.
Of course.
That's all they're interested in, that you're taking your education seriously. As long as you go to university, I don't know about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to have that, to have the freedom that my parents gave me to compete and play and enjoy being a footballer, I think enabled me to give more to my education too, because in that point I wasn't restricted from doing anything I wanted to do. So it just opened up it could open up a lot of different avenues by doing both.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of skills by doing both.
Yeah.
You know,
I understand.
that I otherwise may not have had if I didn't even play football.
Mm. Yeah, so you've had a very, you know, good and long career in football. We're going to cover all that. We're just starting, everybody. We're just warming up here. You haven't had any gaps in your career. That's what I noticed. Do you think this is because you had, you know, a good agent, or do you just think it's luck? Do you just think it's a blessing? You know, how comes you haven't had no gaps? Like, seriously, it's just been like, boom, from 2004, is it? Or three?
3, yeah.
Yeah, 2003 to date, you've just been like constant. You know, you've been consistent.
Yeah.
You know, in your career. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think that for me, sport is such a short career.
Yes.
To be an athlete, there's only so much time you can do this. So you want to make the most of every opportunity, every moment that comes.
Yes.
And actually, it's kind of a bit of a whirlwind. You don't always realise just how much time you've been involved in participating in sport.
Yes.
Until you know, hopefully when I'm retired, I'll look back and I'll be like, wow, this is what I've accomplished.
Yes.
But really what's happened is that I've gone with the flow, and my career and the opportunities have dictated where I go and what I do. So, you know, I started at Arsenal, went to Chelsea, then I went abroad, and those opportunities just kept coming, and I just kept wanting to improve, and I kept wanting to, okay, am I getting a professional contract now? Okay, now I'm a full-time pro.
Yes.
Now I'm playing and training every day.
Yes.
And with that, the sport around me has grown and developed itself too. So that's also another reason why I haven't really had those gaps, because I'm going with the momentum of the game as a whole, and what it's been able to sort of afford me during this time.
Okay. If you've just tuned in, we're here live in the studio, Omega Live Studio. Please follow us on YouTube, Omega Live TV on YouTube. We're live and interactive. Please ask questions. If you have anything you want to ask Anita, ask, because, you know, we're lucky to even have her here. Please ask. And also, we're powered by Omega House Multimedia Company, and Omega House Multimedia Company is based in West Green Road and also in Wood Street, Walthamstow, but our main multimedia place is in West Green Road, and we do a lot of things: media coverage, flyers, posters, key rings, booklets, you know, anything multimedia is done by Omega House. So please come and visit us. If you need anything done, we are at Omega House Studios. So yes, we're here with Anita Asante.
Yes.
Midfielder, defensive midfielder, as you're described.
Correct, yeah.
So what position, you said you play both positions, midfield. I'm confused about the whole thing, because I'm just lost when it comes to football. So explain the position that you play.
Okay, so throughout my career, I've played centre midfield.
Yes.
And it's sort of developed over the years into a defensive midfield player.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of your followers out there will recognise the Makaleli types, the Michael Essien types, that defensive midfield role, and centre-back, so an out-and-out defender. So I've sort of flip-flopped between the two positions for different clubs at different times. I've been able to develop in both positions, and when I was younger, I think it used to annoy me a little bit, because I'm like, I just want to play in one position and develop there, you know.
Yeah.
But as experience has taught me, it's good to be able to play multiple positions, because then you get multiple opportunities to play. And you never know when you're going to be required, whether you're a starting player, a sub player, maybe someone gets injured or they're sick, and
then they're going to need
your coach is like, I trust you to fill in this position, you know. So there are times where I've had to play outside back as well.
What's outside back?
Which is like a defensive winger. So you have to attack and defend, you know, and cover a lot of ground. But you know, there are moments where I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't possibly do that. But I've learned a lot by having the opportunity to sort of test different positions and find out what my skill set is suited to. So, but I really enjoy both, actually, and it really depends on tactics and systems, which I'm not going to go into, but that you can
Don't
go
get
on
too
forever.
political.
Yeah. As to how much I enjoy those roles in the team.
Okay. We're going to talk about your career because, you know, I'm sure everyone wants to know, you know, who you've played for. Obviously, we've spoken about Chelsea and Arsenal. You're at Chelsea now. You started at Arsenal, went to Chelsea for a year, and then you moved on to the States. And this is, you know, where it gets juicy because you played in the States for quite a while.
Yeah.
So what made you move to the States? I mean, you're playing for Chelsea.
Yeah.
You know, you've played for Arsenal, you're playing for Chelsea. What took you to the United States of America?
I think when I was younger, everyone in England, we had this idea that America is where you go to become like a star, if you like, or to develop. And, you know, there are lots of college programs that used to scout players my age at the time, 17, 18, to come to university in America. You know, and that didn't happen for me at the time because I was playing at Arsenal and I was considered a semi-professional. But then when the opportunity came to go to America, it was the only full-time professional league that existed.
Yeah.
And I had just played off the back of a World Cup and then got sort of noticed by playing in the World Cup for England. I got drafted into like a discovery draft, a discovery of new talent or whatever. And then, you know, I got that call like, hey, we would love for you to come here and play for our club. And for me, I was like, I never really ever imagined that I'd get a professional job playing football. Honest opinion. Like, there are lots of kids today that will wake up and say, one day I'm going to be a pro footballer.
Yeah.
But that was never my thought in my head ever until that opportunity came around. So I felt like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. If I don't do this now, I'll probably never do this. And that's really why I left and decided to just jump into the unknown and explore and play in America.
Okay, so you started at Sky WFC. What state was that in?
That was in New Jersey.
Okay, and how long was you there for?
I was there for a year for the first season in 2009. And then I moved on to a few different clubs.
Yeah, you did.
I had quite a trip.
So why was you moving around? I mean, did you have an agent there or was it just...
Yeah, well, when I moved to America, actually, was the first time I got an official agent.
Oh, okay.
So right before my move, I spoke to my manager at Chelsea and said, like, you know, I think I need someone to help me and represent me for contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
he actually had worked with a lot of men's teams in England, and he knew some agents. And he's like, I actually know an American agent who you might get suited to. So I contacted him, you know, had a great discussion, and I felt like, okay, I feel like we have a good relationship and a good rapport.
Yeah.
And then he became my sort of representative.
So was he the one that was, you know,
he's the one
shifting you around in the States?
Well, actually, the agents in the way the American League works, they're not responsible for getting you playing opportunities as such, because the league wasn't structured that way. So when you're there, it's like all American sports. Anyone who follows baseball, basketball, they will know this. It's a draft system.
Okay.
So clubs basically can pick what players they want, and it's kind of like a lottery.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah, I get it.
So the reason I had moved around so much is because I won the championship with Sky Blue after the first season. I got injured in 2009 with a cruciate ligament in my knee.
Oh, wow.
So then I had to come back and I was rehabbing.
So you came back to the UK?
So I was with my national team whilst I was injured, and then I came back from the UK to the US and had all my rehab, my surgery, everything in New Jersey.
Okay.
So off the back of that season, we got a new manager.
Okay.
And her and the her and the director, if you like, you know, they decide what kind of players they want for next season, if they need to save money, if it's budgets.
Yeah.
All this stuff comes into play. So then they said, okay, a club in St. Louis, Missouri, St. Louis Athletico, they want you. They're looking for a defender, and they were actually a top team at the time. They were second in the league at the time. They were actually doing better than the club I was at.
So how does the league work out in America? Is it like the whole of America is one league, or is it by states?
No,
how does that work out?
It's honestly about franchises.
Oh, I get
So it's about who can afford to start a club, run a club, get professionals on board, and you realise how much money goes into it when you have like 2 teams in the West Coast in LA in the first season, and then like 6 or 7 based in the East Coast, you know, and then sort of in the Midwest with St. Louis and Chicago, traveling across the country is actually insane.
It is.
When you think about the size of America. So it's not there yet where it can be expansive, I would say, across the whole country. But so, you know, going back to the trade, I got traded. I got to St. Louis. Within 20 days, the club folded.
Wow.
So I literally hopped off a plane.
When you say folded, what do you mean?
So disbanded.
The club dissolved. Wow.
Because
20 days?
I was there for 20 days, literally.
Wow.
I met my teammates. I met my manager. I had a few training sessions, 1 match. And then the next few days, we were having meetings about the fact that the club was dissolving and there was no playing opportunities for any players here anymore because of some sort of corruption, basically.
Yeah.
And I was in shock. I was just like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, because you've left the UK to,
you know,
obviously.
Well, yeah, I've left the UK. I left a club that I was happy at. Had good bonds and relationships with my teammates. I've come to a new club. I don't know anybody necessarily. And now the club is dissolved. So then it was like, for everybody, it was like no one knew what was going on. Panic, where are you going to play? Everyone's calling the agents. The agents are calling the league. Like, you know, my agent called the league. The league had to restructure because at the time you could only have 5 internationals per team.
Yes.
So they had to make it sort of an exemption to allow us to go on to other teams. So I ended up talking to 2 teams. I spoke to Boston, I spoke to Chicago, and Chicago felt like at the time the right decision for me, even though I had 2 other English players at Boston, because I was coming back from a major knee injury and I didn't want to play on turf.
Okay.
So Chicago had a grass field. They made my decision a bit easier. So I went to Chicago. Again, great team, lots of there was a lot of stars, you know, Brazilian players, US national team players from all over the world was on these teams. And I didn't feel I was getting the playing opportunities that I wanted.
Yeah.
At the time, the club was in a bit of a shambles. They just fired their head coach. So I was coming into something that was in a new phase again, new management, new players. And the old coach who had got fired was English and is now my current Chelsea coach.
Okay, so when you was in the States, did you have any support from family? Like, did you have any family in the States, or, you know, just any type of support, but not within football? Did you have? No,
you know, the team were like my family. Like my team, especially the American players who were from America, who had family, they were so open and welcoming. They made us feel like part of their families and at home. And at the time we had a lot of players that lived with host families.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that, like, where did you stay? How did you
know? Luckily I lived in a long stay hotel. They're like extended, they're called like extended hotels, kind of. And I had a roommate, a Brazilian roommate. So I didn't live with a host family in the first season. But we had host families around the team all the time.
Yeah.
So I got to know them really well, spend time with them and their families, their kids. They'd come to all our games. They'd, you know, anything you needed, they would help, really. And
were you coming back and, like, was you visiting your family?
During the season, no. I didn't have time because of the game schedules. I never had time to travel.
Did your family come and visit you?
My mum and my brother came out in the first year and stayed with me and got to see my games. So that was really cool, just so that they could share in my experience, and they could see, you know, she's okay. Even though she's left home for the first time, she's fine. She's, you know, being well looked after and things like that.
Yeah, so from Chicago Red Stars, you moved to Washington Freedom.
Yes.
So how was your stay in Washington? Because from Chicago to Washington, it's like another journey, another distance, isn't it? Like,
all the states are so different as well, you know, like.
Because New Jersey is like kind of New York type of feel.
Exactly.
And then you go to St. Louis, which is like
the South.
The South.
The South.
And then you come back to Chicago. Chicago is...
It's sort of Midwest, kind of.
Yeah, Midwest. And then Midwest to Washington.
Yeah.
So you had a good feel of the States.
I did. I got to really experience a lot. And I really loved the time I spent there, especially in Chicago. Yeah. You know, the trade side of it isn't as glamorous as people might think. Like getting traded and moving around as often as I did, as quickly as it happens. You literally have a meeting with the director and the manager, and then within 2 days you're gone.
Yeah.
You're in another state, you're in another team. You pack up your bags and that's it. There's no kind of time to let things digest and like, you know, get into a place where you're like, okay, am I ready for this? Am I ready to leave my friends or whatever behind? There's none of that. So I got to Washington and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna just, you know, I'm gonna get playing opportunities. So first and foremost, that was the most important thing for me. So I was excited about that. I was also excited to be in like the political hub of the United States, you know.
Which is Chicago.
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, it is, yes.
To be there and to see, you know, just to see like how different the state is and the White House and all of that was amazing to me. So it was great to go there. But like I said, like the trading and moving around, that side wasn't as fun as you might imagine. Like it can be quite lonely.
Yes.
Experience. It can be quite. You know, my family were away from me, and I remember the first time I got traded, calling my mum on Skype and being like, "Okay, Mum, I'm in this house with a roommate I haven't met yet because I've travelled in the night. They've just dropped me off at a house. They said you got a roommate. I don't even know her name. I'm in this room. I don't have a proper duvet, a proper pillow, nothing."
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, oh my God, like, this is awful. Really. And
especially in winter times in the States, it's really cold.
And of course, people go through so much worse. It wasn't even like, it's just the shock of everything, like the transition, the being alone. And then you start to analyze just little things, details.
Yeah.
And all of that combined, I think made me really more resilient. And like, I grew as a person for sure because of my experience in America, and just to be independent and, you know, ask for what you want, which I think typically women aren't good at doing. Yeah. Demanding like better standards for ourselves.
For themselves,
So that's
I know
really
you're big on that.
Yeah.
We're going to go into that. We're going to go into that in a bit. So you went to Sweden after your career in the USA. I mean, why did you go to Sweden? I mean, you was in the USA, you were doing well. You know, the soccer league there was expanding. People were learning more about football in the States. You know, then after all that, you're in Sweden. Did you come back to London, or did you go straight from the States to Sweden?
I actually came home first, so I came back to London.
Actually, why was the reason? Yeah, okay, that's what I'm asking. But I mean, did something end, or you know? Actually,
what happened was the league dissolved. The whole league.
Again.
The whole league dissolved after 3 years. And,
wow.
You know, it had a history in the early 2000s when it was pro that it dissolved after 3 years. So it became this thing about this myth, like, oh my God, the US league it only lasts 3 years and then it dissolves. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
So at that time, was you like, what am I going to do? I don't know what.
Yeah, of course.
So you
I felt really at home in the States at that time.
Yeah.
And I could have imagined staying.
Yeah.
But then I was on the national team. And for me, it was important to still be playing a high level, an elite level that was competitive. And if the States, with the league disbanding, being unable to provide that, I really had to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I had lived in a house actually, the final season in 2011 with a Swedish player. You know, I had two different Swedish housemates and different players, and they said to me, you know, I think your personality, like, you'd love it in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
I think you just settle right in. You're a good player. It's quite a good league. I think you should really think about consider it.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had some random contacts that were messaging me like, oh, you should come and play in Germany. One of the German players is injured. This Bayern's looking for a player. And something in my gut instinct told me that Sweden was more somewhat appealing to me.
Yeah.
And so I just took a leap of faith, actually, and just said, I'm going to go to Gothenburg. I'm going to sign with this club. I don't know a great deal about them, but I know they were sort of in the top 4 of teams there. And I'm just going to try and enjoy the experience as a whole. The football side of it, but also the culture, learning the culture,
all that stuff.
New language. And I trusted my friends. I trusted
you trusted their judgment.
And what they were telling me. So that's really what happened. I went home, discussed it with my family. And said,
again.
by the way, I'm going to jump on this opportunity and I'm going to go to Scandinavia. But, you know, it's a good thing because at least I knew I could always travel home over shorter distances with less time constraints. And that's really what happened. So I ended up signing for Gothenburg, which is actually the cider brand. So the owner of the club is the same owner for Kopparberg.
Oh, the beer.
Yeah, the beer and the cider.
Oh, okay.
It's the same owner
of the football club.
The football club.
Okay.
And so I got to meet him, and you know, at the time, like the brand itself was not as big as it is now. Like everyone knows Kopparberg.
Yeah.
But then I was like, he was always explaining his business and how it started.
Okay.
I found him very interesting and intriguing. You know, just how the business side of things, how he started up his business, why he got invested in the women's game. So it turned out to be a really good move for me, actually.
Okay, so you went to Gothenburg and then you went to FC Rosengård. Once again, how did that? I'm learning here. I'm learning. I'm so like, I feel like I'm just like, okay. I'm really taking it all in and just learning and, you know, trying to understand women's football because it's really, I find it so intriguing. When I met you, I was like, wow, like, I've met a woman who plays football, a Ghanaian woman who plays football, and, you know, I was just so intrigued by it. I just found it so interesting. The fact that you've taken it as a career, you know, it's not something you do on the side. You do, this is your life.
Yeah, basically.
You know, you live it, you sleep it, you smell it, you feel it, you know.
Definitely. I guess I've always considered myself like as more of an introverted person. So it's kind of interesting that I have sort of jumped on these opportunities and moved around a lot because, again, when I went to Gothenburg, I had a great 2 seasons there. And so the top club in Sweden came calling for me, basically. And I was just like, wow, like, I can't believe it. Like, you know, they really want to sign me. They want me to go there. And I was like, of course, you know, to go to a top club that I knew would get to play in European competitions like Champions League was also another step.
That's what I was going to ask you, because obviously you went to the States and, you know, the States is the States. Football's like, it's not too big there, but obviously Swedish football is just like a different league. So how was it? Was you like, I mean, how, like, was you like a star? Did people recognize you?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think when I was in Gothenburg, yeah, like just even being in the city, sometimes you'd get recognised. And of course, being a black woman in Sweden or in Scandinavia, you're definitely going to stand out more. You know, you're going to be noticed because it's not as maybe diverse as London. You know, so but everyone was always so positive and so like, oh yeah, I watched your team and like you guys did really well. And you know, I had a guy that just tweeted me one time, was like, I really want to meet you, and he turned out to be quite a well-known celebrity in Gothenburg. Oh wow! So I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. And so, yeah, on a sort of smaller scale, it was a bit like that, and even more so when I moved to Rosengård in Malmö in the south, because of the profile of the club. People definitely recognised me and my teammates more, and it's a smaller city as well, so you could just be in a cafe and people would be like, oh, this is the Rosengård girls, like, can we get pictures, can we sign things? And I actually loved that sense of feeling like part of a community where people are just proud. Yeah. They're proud of your club, they're proud of you, how you're representing their city. And
you were saying before that at that time, football was more established in Sweden than it is in the UK.
Yeah, I think they had a history of like dominant clubs in European competitions, like then the UEFA Women's Cup, which is now the Women's Champions League. they had dominant sides like Umeå from the north of Sweden, who got to finals, who won championships. So they'd already been participating in the women's game and sort of spearheading it for a long time. So it was great to go to a nation and see just like the fabric of the sport and how they manage it, what the resources were like, and what opportunities they were trying to give to girls.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ethoses of my club was that the whole goal was to try and create a full-time professional team and give girls opportunities to play, where they could actually see there's a chance for you in the future to be a professional and have that opportunity. So for me, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like this is a smaller club.
Yes.
Compared to the big clubs
Yes.
that you have in England.
Yes.
But they're doing it all by themselves. They're doing
yeah.
it by fundraising. They're doing it by going out, trying to get sponsors themselves. They're working for with non-profit campaigns and organisations
all that stuff,
in other countries. Like my club has one in South Africa where they work with girls to try and give them opportunities to play and get educated and all this stuff. And I was just like, who wouldn't want to be part of that?
Yes.
This is like much bigger than just the football. It's a whole element of just giving girls and women the self-esteem.
It's a movement.
It's a movement.
Yeah.
Give them confidence, give them role models, give them a vision of what opportunities exist, and also to dream. Like for kids to have dreams, you know, and really believe in them and really see that there are avenues to get there.
Okay, so you've had this amazing career. You started in Arsenal, you went to Chelsea, went to the USA, come back to London, go to Sweden, and now you're back at Chelsea. We're going to talk about that later on, how you ended up, you know, back at Chelsea. Now I want to just talk about, you know, women's football in general and how the world sees women's football compared to men's football, you know. So in terms of salary, you know, I know there's a big difference in terms of women's football and men's football.
Yeah.
What's your views on, you know, salaries regarding men's football and women's football?
Well, luckily, obviously, I play at a club where all the players on my team are full-time professionals, and they can afford to give us a salary that we can be full-time. But to be honest, I'll tell you, our salaries are probably the equivalent to most civil servant workers in the UK. So they're not like extremely exponential. Obviously, there will be individual players, some of them who are quite high profile, that might acquire money through sponsors, endorsements and things like that. But it's still on a much, much smaller scale than obviously in the men's game. You know, there's this whole argument, of course, that the men earn this amount of money because they pull in the audiences. You know, they get butts of seats. You know, they have the commercial commodification of the game, and as them as high-profile players. And my argument is always that, yes, of course, you know, that's fair enough. But I think that, you know, they've also got the mechanisms to get the game out there, to make it accessible for viewers, to make it accessible for people to go and attend. They've got the profiles behind them, obviously, to spearhead that. Imagine what could happen if women have the same platforms. It's all down to exposure. It's all down to who cares enough to invest, and who thinks it's something that could be commercial, you know. And I think time and time again, the women's game is proving that we do have audiences that are interested, that want to watch. Just recently in Spain, Barcelona women's team Atletico had 68,000 people attend their match 2 or 3 days ago. So we know there's an audience that are willing, you know, willing supporters that want to go there and watch all over the world. You know, we do the same when we have the FA Cup here. I played in the Olympics where we had nearly 80,000 people come and watch our game against Brazil. Wow. So I know for a fact there are people that are willing to, you know, support the women's game. So it's just about having the platforms.
But then there's support, and then there's support, and there's help. There's financial help, isn't it? Or financially,
Of course.
Because
but
that's the difference, because support doesn't mean financial aid or investing.
No, of course not. But
Yeah.
I think the point is the men's game came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It started from the bottom.
Yes.
And it rose and it grew. And the whole entity has been able to generate money over time with interest. The women's game has the same opportunity to do that if it gets the same level of support.
Yeah. But some would say you can't compare men's football to women's football.
Well, that's the point I always make. It's not about comparing.
Yeah.
We need to, for example, if I'm a doctor and you're and a man is a doctor, do I need to compare myself to him based off of gender? No. We base it off of the work and the quality and the productivity.
Yes.
Same with the women's game. Is it good? Are they at the elite level? Are they playing other women of an elite level? Yes. You measure it by itself. We don't need to make this cross comparison all the time. I think we do. That's the part of the problem. Everyone's looking, but can the women do it like this and the men do it like this? It's not about that. People like different things.
That's true.
Spectators like different things.
Yes.
Some spectators prefer maybe to go to a women's game because it's not as aggressive in the stands to a men's game. So you have different audiences that you obviously can sell to as well. But the thing for me is that the women's game is showing with the growth of it.
It's evolving, isn't it?
That there is money that can grow within the sport, because now you're getting journalists. Over 10, 15 years ago, you maybe had 3 or 4 journalists travel to a major tournament to cover a women's team. Now you've got 300 plus from all over the world wanting to cover women's football and women's sport. That's the difference. Just today, the Telegraph announced a whole women's section on sport. That happened today. They've got a whole editorial team. They've got players and profiles behind it, writing in columns.
Wow.
My good friend Eniola writes for The Guardian.
Okay.
These things are happening. This
yes,
is because,
things are.
Because it is something that people want as well. They want. How boring would it be if we only had one perspective or one voice in a sport?
Yeah.
Or one. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do understand. Wow, Anita, you've just consumed me and zapped me into this world of women's football. I'm just listening. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. If you've just joined us, we have been talking to Anita Asante, who is a footballer. She plays for Chelsea Women's Football Club. She's an international footballer, actually. She's played in the USA, she's played in Sweden, and now she's back in the UK. She's just a powerful being, and she loves football. She loves what she does, and this is why she's here. This is why she's on Goal Diggers, because she's a perfect example of someone who has achieved her goals and still, goal digging. She's still, on the hunt, to achieve many other things within women's football. So yes, Anita, I don't even know. So yes, in 2005, because you mentioned this AstroTurf and grass thing before.
Yeah.
So I know you've got issues. I know you've got issues with. You play for the English national team. So in 2005, England played in the Women's World Cup, and there was a petition, and apparently you were the only English footballer who signed that petition, and the petition was, you guys don't want to play on artificial grass, you want to play on real grass.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. I mean, did this petition happen before the World Cup, or was it during the World Cup, or was it after the World Cup? And has that changed anything now? Like, what's going on with all that stuff? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, well, the petition was before the World Cup.
Okay.
And I think it was spearheaded, if I'm correct, by US national team players.
Okay.
Initially, they're the ones to start it and be like, this is unacceptable. Yes. So they were kind of driving the standards, if you like.
Okay.
And they could, obviously, because they're very successful teams and players. And I felt like, this is an opportunity to voice what we want. We're the ones who are affected. We're going to have to go and play in this tournament and deal with the conditions. So I really wasn't happy because I had come back from major a knee surgery and an injury, and I didn't want to have to play on a surface that I knew could potentially be harmful to my body, and that was one of the main reasons. The second reason was because I felt like it was undermining our sport.
Yes.
And undermining us as women.
Because the men obviously don't play on artificial grass; they play on real grass. So why not? How comes the women can't play on real grass too?
Exactly, and that's exactly the same conversations and arguments and discussions that we had at the time. Because, you know, in equal measure, we were saying we're playing on the highest level of our sport.
Yes.
On the world stage, and you're saying to us that you can't provide grass pitches for us to play on.
And this is the World Cup.
This is the World Cup.
Yeah.
For us, that was unacceptable.
Yeah, like they're taking you for practice.
And also for the way that it would be reflected upon was that, well, does it even makes it look a little bit unprofessional?
Yeah.
We're trying to show that these are the best athletes in the world in their own right, in their sport, and they deserve to have the best opportunities and resources to display their talents. Why would we reduce them to something like that? And that's really why I signed up for it, regardless of the consequences. I didn't know what the consequences would be for me voicing my opinion, but I've always been someone that I believe that you should stand for something that you believe in, and for me at the time it felt like it was important to voice that.
Yes. So if you're joining us, sorry, I'm on my phone, guys, because I'm trying to get interactive here. If you just joined us, we're talking to Anita Asante. She's a midfielder, defensive midfielder. I'm learning. She's a defensive midfielder. She's also a defender. You know, and all. She's also a defender. She plays for Chelsea and all that. So yes, we're also live on YouTube. You can subscribe there. We're interactive there. We're here on Facebook. You know, still share this conversation because it's still going on. We're still talking to Anita. You play. Sorry, my phone is really getting on my nerves. Okay, so you play for the English national team. You're Ghanaian. People are gonna, people want to know, like, have you ever been approached by the Ghana women's national team? Is there a national? Well, I know there is a national team.
Yeah.
You know, why not Ghana? Why England?
I guess because when I got involved in football, I was born and raised in England, so technically it's home for me. And when I started playing for clubs like Arsenal at 14, I was already getting scouted into the national team system.
Yes.
So I was already getting to the youth teams at England, U17s, U20, 21s, then U23s.
Yes.
Then the first team. So it kind of happened in an organic way that I wasn't really necessarily thinking about, would I represent Ghana or not, because I didn't know enough either about
Ghana,
about the Ghana women's national team. I didn't know about the sort of the global women's game as such at that age. It's only later on as an adult, or when I'm 16, 17, and you play in competitions and you're aware of these other nations and what they might be having going on. And I wasn't approached either. So it hadn't really registered in my mind that there was an opportunity to play for Ghana's women's team, to be honest. I got approached much later in my career.
So they did approach you? Yeah,
much later. Okay. We would have loved for you to play for Ghana and blah blah blah. And I was like, of course it would. It's a great honor to even have them contact me and be interested, of course. But you
can't switch over.
You can't switch over.
Yeah, that's it.
You'd have to spend some years of not playing for one nation before you can play for another, and it really just, the opportunity is like one of those things that just never came at the right time, I guess, to come into my sort of consciousness. But I know they're doing really well now, and they're really developing the women's game in Ghana and the national team. And I only hope that it continues, and hopefully post-playing career I can hopefully lend some experience and expertise to the development of the women's game in Ghana.
So how many appearances have you had for the English national team?
75 appearances, as far as I'm aware.
And are you playing for them now still? Like, how's that going?
So I haven't been currently involved in the squad this past season. I got injured with the national team after being recalled back into the national team after 3 years away from it in March of last year. I tore my ligament in my knee really bad again, and had to have surgery, and the process to recover takes 9 months to a year in some cases to get back from. So I just really haven't been able to haven't had a window of time really to get back to playing as many minutes, etc., to get the opportunity to be looked at really for the national team, especially now with the World Cup approaching this summer. Such a short window of time that to get selected would have been really difficult. But you know, they have a really great squad this year, and I think hopefully England will do well in the World Cup off the back of the last tournament. So so you've been injured, you've been injured quite a few times in your career. How have you bounced back? I mean, because some people get injured and then that's the end of it. But with you, you've bounced back. I mean, what does it boil down to? Is it good I mean, do you pay? Is it investing in getting good surgery, or getting, how does that work? Does the team pay for it when you get injured, or do they just desert you and then you have to sort yourself out? Because obviously with men's football, but with women's football, does it work the same way when you get injured? I mean, for the most part,
do you still get paid?
Yeah, for the most part, you do. Like, for example, in Sweden, they have a policy, like when you get injured, you get like, I think 80% of your salary covered by your club, and then like the rest of it gets covered by the government. Or vice versa.
So there's some type of incentive.
So there's some way of making sure that those people are taken care of. In my case, in both cases, I was injured with the national team, so I was covered by the national team and their insurance and stuff. So, and then my club in the US were willing to really just look after my rehabilitation process. So they were like, we have a great surgeon in New Jersey who's done this a billion times with this type of injury. So I had complete faith in it, went with it, did all the treatment, and literally just had to have the willpower, the desire, the motivation to get back. Because that's really what it is. It's a long road, it's a tough road. But you have to just be mentally, I think, strong, and you have to be positive, because that obviously aids recovery as well. And I was fortunate to have really good people around me who kind of just boosted my spirits and helped me push through. And this time around, getting injured, 10 years later, with the same type of injury, slightly worse, I could just see how much, number one, medical science, technology has developed. It's like night and day between my two knees and two injuries, honestly, because at Chelsea, we have state-of-the-art machines and technology to treat me and, for my recovery. I had access to physios every day. You actually work harder as an injured player than you do as a healthy player. You're in every day. Typically I'd get in at 8 o'clock, working with them. I'm not leaving there till 4 or 5 some days. And it's intensive. And everyone is working for the same goal, to get me back to my best. And the best thing about this time was that I was home in the UK. And I could have my mum and my dad and my family and friends around me. And they just took care of me, because you wouldn't believe it, like with an ACL injury, which is what I had.
What's the ACL injury?
So it's a ligament. You have 2 ligaments that cross over your knee like this, that allow your knee to flex and straighten. And basically I've torn it completely off.
Wow.
And I've done some damage to both ligaments that run outside of the knee as well. So I strained them, and then I did some damage to the cartilage, which allows, so you don't get this bone-to-bone grinding, so you have a bit more friction. I damaged that quite badly as well. So I had to have surgery for that, basically, so that I could be have the opportunity to run, walk, everything. But just having my mum and my dad around, and my brother and sister was this time around was amazing, because they were just there for me, listened to me, cook for me.
Everything. You've got
You
a
know?
really good support network with your family, which is amazing.
Massively.
That's really good.
Makes a huge difference.
So what's your training schedule like? I mean, not just for football, but you personally. Like, how do you work out?
Yeah.
You know, how do you keep yourself fit? Because you're pretty fit. You're in good shape.
Yeah.
You know.
I guess with fitness and training,
Mhm.
over the years, it's always about trial and error a little bit, because every individual is different. Like what works for me might not work for someone else, etc. But obviously, I'm training with the team every day, so all of that stuff is managed for me. I'm not really having to think about what am I doing in training per se.
Yes.
But the good thing about being at this level is that with enough time experience, we have a voice to say to our coaches, or you know, the staff in general, you know, I want to get better at heading. I want to, I don't know, practice shooting, whatever it is.
Yes.
And because there's enough coaches around, we have the opportunities to get individual training and individual development. And really that's what it is. Like, I get to training, we have breakfast every morning together as a team between 8:30 and 9:30. After that, we might get to do, you know, if you need treatment, medical, in terms of massage, whatever, you can do that. And then we'll do pre-activation, which is a range of like stretches and different movements to just prep our bodies to get ready for like action on the pitch. Then we'll go and train. We'll train for about an hour and a half on the field. And then after that, we might have opportunities to work on individual things if we want and we feel up to it. And then, directly after that, we might get a gym session twice a week, depending on the game schedule. It could be less. But that's like a typical training day, and sometimes factored in team meetings.
So that's literally your training regime. Like, that's it. So apart from football, what other sports do you like to play?
When I was growing up, I used to love tennis.
Okay.
Used to play tennis a little bit.
So you could have been Serena.
Serena, the Williams sisters are like my role models. They're like.
I was going to actually ask you that. So you've actually answered one of the questions, because I was going to ask you who, like in sport, who, you know, who's influenced you, who you admire.
Oh yeah, definitely the Williams sisters. They were like my idols. Like,
wow.
I remember getting the opportunity to go to Wimbledon with my school and watching them play and being like just in awe and blown away to see, you know, these two African American girls playing and just smashing everyone. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to, in my sport, I want to go out there and achieve things and have people remember you and your legacy. And for me, they're just a complete inspiration, especially knowing their backstory. You know, how hard they had to sort of fight in terms of obstacles and how hard they've worked really to achieve what they have.
Yes.
I think for anyone it's inspirational, regardless if you're into sport or not, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. So you've played for 9 football teams. That's just amazing, 9 football teams. Which one has been your most memorable?
Oh, that's tough. I don't want to upset anyone.
Well, you're just speaking your truth, isn't it? Like
managers, no.
Because memorable doesn't mean your favourite. I mean, memorable could mean anything. You could have had bad experiences, but maybe they made you stronger. Do you know what I mean? You could have had, you know, a really horrible experience, but you know, it's your most memorable. So memorable doesn't mean favourite as such. It just means the one that you know, that stays in your mind the most, or that has. Yeah,
I think obviously it'd probably be Arsenal because I spent the longest part of my career there.
Yes, that's true.
And I grew there.
Yes.
From a young person to an adult also.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think playing there was my most memorable because, especially the 2007 season where we won everything. We did the quadruple. We won the FA Cup, League Cup, the league, and the first ever European title for an English club. To just be part of that history and that legacy for me is like something I'm immensely proud of. But you know, I knew and shared with so many people that I grew up playing with. Definitely has to be one of my most memorable experiences for sure.
Okay. You have, you know, the reason why you're such a role model is because you're not just a footballer, you're a very educated woman as well. You have a degree, you have a master's, currently doing a PhD.
Yeah, well, I'm not currently working on my PhD,
But you started.
I started it some years ago. It's been on hold a couple of years now, just because of my playing career, to be honest.
Okay.
You know, like I say to anyone that's studying or invested in something, especially a PhD, it has to be your baby. Like,
yes.
It's something you eat, sleep, breathe every single day.
Yeah, PhDs are not easy.
You know, it's a commitment, and you should be all in. At the time, when I decided to do one, I felt that I would have the time.
Okay,
Yeah, when I first started, and I didn't expect to get a full-time playing professional contract and be playing. This is the same time I moved to America. I started just before this time. So, you know, I tried to do the whole juggle it at the same time, which I've managed to do with my degrees and etc. But like I said, this is a whole other whopper, like a PhD. So just the way my career has gone with my football, I haven't been able to really commit to it, to complete it basically. But of course, maybe one day I'll have the opportunity to go back.
Yeah. And how was your
complete it?
Yeah. So how's your education impacted on your career? Because you know what you've studied interrelates with your career.
Yeah. I guess it's taught me a lot about not just the being an athlete part of being a footballer. It's taught me about the business side of being a football.
Yes.
The other elements, the other levels, the other relationships that go on within a football club or within a team. You know, the dynamics and also the social skills that are sort of needed at all levels to get the best out of people around you, regardless of being a player, a manager, a director, and all these elements. How to better the sport, to make it more inclusive. You know, what do we need to make it open and things like that. So that's really how my degree and my master's helped me in both ways. I could infer from my experiences as a footballer for my studies, and my studies could also teach me a little bit about the other elements of the game around the team and around running a club, etc., etc. So yeah, you know, and I always felt that maybe one day when I'm done playing, it could be something that I would be interested in going into, sort of, you know, being part of backroom staff of a club or management, directorship, marketing, all those elements. So.
Yeah, that's true. It kind of you've kind of answered, you know, another question I was going to ask, because as we know, the average footballer's career finishes at 35. Unless you're a goalkeeper, it can go on longer, and now you're 33.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've studied in a strategic kind of way, because it's covered, you know, like I said, you've learned educationally about football. And then obviously you're really into equality and diversity, and you know your PhD is all about that, the governance, isn't it, within the Women's Football League and all that stuff. So it's like you've thought about this. You know, you have a plan. You must have a plan. So what is the plan? You know, what is your plan when you finish, you know, playing football? I mean, obviously you're not just going to finish, but
yeah, I mean, I think by having that kind of education has just like opened up different avenues or understandings of like what possible roles could I potentially go into. Because for me, I'm not really necessarily going to be a coach. I've always been more interested in the political dynamics of teams and clubs and policy and how to impact from the outside in, you know, players' development and opportunities.
Yes.
So you know, for me it'd be like learning about management and directorship, but also, you know, currently I'm doing a lot of more writing for different platforms. Give Me Sport, and just become part of their sort of voice for the women's sport there. And She Kicks magazine, which is another magazine that's been long-standing in the women's game, writing pieces there. So I'm developing my skills as well as a writer and a broadcaster. So it's potentially something that that I could potentially go into is like broadcasting, commentating, punditry,
all that
kind of stuff, because that industry interests me and I've had some exposure to it. So yeah, I've kind of set myself up, hopefully, to go in that direction, but to use my education as a backdrop to my understanding of what the game needs, or could benefit from moving forward.
Okay, it's been lovely talking to you, Anita. There's so many questions I have down here. Like I've literally, this is just half. I think we have to do a part 2 with Anita Asante, because I haven't even asked her half of the questions. But time's running out. Time is not on our side today. So Anita, before we leave, where can people find you on social media? Because I'm sure, I didn't know about you until I met you at that photo shoot.
Right.
I had no, clue that you even existed. And I'm sure there's a lot of people watching, within the community that want to know more about you, more about what you do. Where can they find you?
You can hit me up at Nice and Neats on Twitter. Also Neats2, number 2, on Instagram. Also on Facebook. Just type my name up. My profiles will pop up. So you can hit me up there.
Okay, amazing. So you've been watching Goal Diggers, and it's our 5th show, and I'm so happy that Anita's been here. We're still celebrating International Women's Month, and I thought it would just be amazing to have Anita in the studio, because she's not only a footballer, she's also an educated woman. She has a plan. She's also pursued most of her goals and still goal digging, searching. So she's told you where you can find her. Go look her up, hit her up. She's a lovely person. She's very friendly. I'm sure she'll return your messages. So thank you, everyone. You've been watching Goal Diggers on Omega Live TV. Until next week, see you again.